Okay, I call the meeting to order for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Monday, March 18th, 2019. Will you call the roll?
Rick Pitzel.
Present.
Kathy Stevenson. Beth Kazam. Present. Tessie Buckler.
Present.
Sarah DeBoer here. Steve Cady.
Present.
Mike Wu.
Here.
Craig Masters.
Present.
Nico Tijerina.
Okay. On the agenda, first item is to approve the minutes from the January 14th, 2019 meeting. Everybody has a copy of those, have gotten a copy of those previously. Any corrections, changes, questions? No? Okay. Motion would be in order to approve the minutes then of
Motion.
Second.
Who motioned? I'm sorry.
Mike. Moved and seconded to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second by Tessie. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, on to new business, or the review of old business, actually. So Katie, Kim, you here? So we have the site plan review and variance application by P.H. Samuel LLC, seeking approval of a site plan proposed mixed-use commercial residential building variance for front corner lot fences, variance for parking requirements for the described parcels located in the zoning district set forth. And then she has sent us, I think everybody on the board got a copy of options 1, 2, and 3, correct? Option 1 being very similar to where we left off last meeting. Option 2 and then with the parking out front, then option with side parking out front, and then option 3, the parking across the street. So do you have, she can plug in, yeah. She has stuff. Yeah.
Wanted to detail out some of the minor revisions that we did that didn't really get itemized in the application. More of the feedback that we received from the last meeting. I'm going to try and stand over here, but stand out of the way. Basically, we took notes at the last meeting of some feedback and comments and revisions that were requested, and basically itemized those out and went over it. I know with Rick and Kathy in some meetings, as well as some of the village staff. But wanted to outline those because they're not code requirements, but they are things that we did hear what your concerns were and wanted to address them. And so wanted to just go through those real quick, going one by one here. The revisions, the building was located, but so the code says a building has to be 0 right on the lot line or 8 foot back. So I'm trying to get this under control. 8 foot back from the sideline, property line, and we currently had it 8 foot from the side last time, and the feedback we were given was to increase that. We didn't know how much, and so when I went back and I actually got the recording from the last meeting to kind of see if there was any thought put out towards like how much, whether it was 10 foot or 9 foot. And so there wasn't a mention of that. So we went and we moved the building over as far as we could from sorry, is it just double there? From the property line on the east side. And the reason we only could move it over 10 feet is because if you see in the bottom corner of the site plan, there are handicap parking spaces, and then there's two regular parking spaces at the corner where the side alley and the perpendicular alley to Prospect come together. And if we moved it over any more, we'd be asking for an increased parking variance. So 10 feet is really the farthest we can move over the building without causing another issue on the other side. So we did make that adjustment. And then, as you can see here, I just kind of highlighted where that dimension is on the site plan that you guys have in your possession right now. The transformer location, originally it was put up front towards Samuel. That was going to have some landscaping around it, and there was discussion if we could move it towards the rear. After some conversations of the utilities and where they're run and where they come into, we're able to move it into this corner here where the alley is, and that pulls it back a little bit, and it also widens that turning radius, which was another point later on that we were able to enhance that turning radius, making it a little bit bigger, widening that area. The patio area along the front and the green space along the front of Samuel, we looked at that, and in the switch from going back to our original plan of the first floor commercial space and then the upper floors being residential, we were able to take those patios out and create more green space. So here is where those enhanced green spaces are along the front of Samuel to see. And let me know if I need to move out of the way, but probably can see over me. And then the landscape buffer yard along the east property line. Originally, we didn't put one there because of the fence, the privacy fence that's there. However, it was really encouraged to put that, so we have added trees there that would grow tall, and they would be an evergreen type of a tree that would grow and always have its always be green. And then we continued with taking the feedback into consideration on the landscape enhancements and then the front yard, and also in that rear corner there to make it, we had the transformer again up in the front. We moved it to the back, kept the landscaping around it. So even though we moved the transformer, we still kept that landscaping around it so it wasn't an eyesore, even though it's in an alley in an alley. We want to make that look nice. And then we were asked to increase the number of trees in the front yard, so we did add 3 more trees to that front yard landscape. Those trees would be where we would, those would be either a blooming tree or a deciduous tree where it would, it would shed its leaves. The dumpster enclosure, had a couple conversations about this with the relocation of it. Having relocated it to that back corner, which then butts up to the neighbor's garage, so having kind of those 2 structures next to each other. And as previously mentioned, widening that turning radius on the corner in the alley, so we can see that now we made that as wide as we can. And then the building use, which triggers also the parking requirement. Originally, when we went to the board with the site originally and the project originally, we had the commercial space on the first floor with the B1 zoning and the residential above. So we revised it to be 100% residential based on basically supply and market demand, that we were hearing that we needed more of condo living in the heights because the aging population. And so we had made this switch, however, through the process, revised it back to what we originally submitted. With the building use is first floor commercial, and then the second, third, and fourth floor residential suites. And the residential suites, we also reduced it because of the parking request that each of the units have those front and back parking spaces. So that reduced our units from 19 to 16, which then also decreased our parking requirement as well. And then each resident has its own parking area or space. Again, I tried to go back to see how we termed it and classified it, and we kind of just said area. And then in reducing the parking requirements, it also reduces our requirement for the ADA spaces. So we don't need 2 ADA spaces by code, we only need 1. So that's why you'll see that one of the handicap spaces has been removed, which also enabled us to move those parking spaces over and widen that turn radius as well in the corner of the alley. So the initial parking requirements, to our understanding, and I know Rick's heard me say this before, we thought there was no requirement for the business zoning there, but with the business district and finding out that there is a parking requirement, that revises our parking requirements to roughly 32 spaces for this development. Our current plan has 25 spaces. We have the 14 garage spaces, the 8 spaces along the rear alley, 1 of the handicap spaces, for a total of the 25 spaces plus the handicap. So we fulfill the residential parking requirement. And to kind of show how we have those laid out, because I know last time we had a question about the location. So put here that we have the 8 inside the garage, 8 behind it, the 6 on the garage and the other alley, as well as the 2 outside. And you see the handicap parking space is not designated to a unit, even though there will be handicap enabled units within the building. We didn't assign this parking. So with the residential handled in that manner, then it was looking at how do we address the commercial spaces. And because we don't know what is going in there right now in the commercial setting, we, through meetings, got that there's 8 spaces required by code. And so we presented 3 options in discussion of these potential parking. One is the diagonal parking along Samuel, where we would give up 2 to 3 feet of the property line and have the parking come in. The second one is just a regular, I would not say regular, just a flat out waiver of the parking requirement for the commercial space. And then the third is the parking lot across the street option. So when we look at option 1, it would provide 11 spaces where there are currently 4 spaces now, and there are 4 spaces due to the 2 driveways that are there for 1310 and 1314. So you really would only be able to get, or we really can only park right now 4 spaces along the street. This option would make all of those 11 spaces public use. We're not requesting any restriction of use or hours of time or any kind of restriction at all. So if Leaves and Beans Saturday morning, their clients want to park there, they'll be able to park there. And then also enhance and enlarge the drive lane along Samuel. So with the current parking on both sides of the street, the driveway is about 12.6 feet wide, and the proposed drive lane would be about 16.1 feet wide. And I had put these dimensions on the top of the site plan, just so you can kind of see where they're at. And I know in talking it wasn't clear as to what this really meant. So when we look at a cut section of the street, if we could just literally bisect the street and cut it in half, the road from curb to curb is about is exactly 23.9 feet. So if we take the parking requirements for the parking spaces that the village has of 8.5 feet wide of each car, that gives you a 12.6 drive lane wide. Our proposed option would still have the on-street parking on the north side of the street, and then the cars would hang out into the street about 5 feet with the current angles and how it's currently drawn. And so that would increase the drive lane about exactly 16.1 drive feet for the drive lane at that point. So this would be, again, if you could kind of cut it down and look at the street with the cars parking there and how much room. That would really help get the 2-way traffic along that street and enhance the flow. With option 2 is just really a straight waiver for the commercial parking spaces with the removal of the driveways. And again, going back to our master plan of the 2 blocks that we have control over to develop is getting the driveways out of the front yard and more into the back. So we would still take out the driveways in front, increasing the walkability and increasing that front area. So then we'd be able to get 5 parking spaces as opposed to the existing 4. And it'd be similar conditions to the existing commercial spaces here with the parking requirement. With option 3, we have the lot across the street here, and with the diagonal parking that we proposed, we were able to get the 7 spaces, so we'd be counting the handicap as one of the parking spaces. If not, we would need to see if we could either get a waiver for that one or count an on-street parking space as well. Through meetings and discussions, with the heights and the engineering standards, we had to adjust the angle, which took it from the 7 to the 5 or 6, depending on how that last space is counted. And then the additional request for the cost of the parking lot to add the bollards and some of the different restrictions really makes it not a financially viable option for us at this point. And the parking lot would be 100% private on this case. And so that's kind of the revisions that we made from the last time that you guys have seen those plans. So I just wanted to walk you through all the adjustments we made, take into consideration your feedback and comments, and if you have any questions.
So, remind me again what the commercial square footage is.
It's about 2,400 square feet.
So that one you're showing up there is the 30 degree angles? Is that?
Yeah, that's the one we revised with the standard that was submitted for the angle.
But the width is still the same, right? Still 17.
So yeah, so this.
I can't see those 2 little numbers, but.
Yeah, so that was the one we resubmitted.
So what's those 2 numbers say?
That's 17 and a half and 12.
Yep, okay.
And 12.1. One of the things we didn't go into, and I didn't go into the slides, is obviously with our plan for the 2 blocks, this would be a lot that we would have a home on, ideally. The reason we're not so excited about this option is, again, it creates that drive coming in on off of Samuel, or actually this way it would be coming in on Samuel. And again, doesn't enhance the walkability and keeping that sidewalk, you'd have cars passing, which you're still gonna have that right now, but it doesn't kind of get to that view that we wanna have all the traffic coming in through the alley. And so it would take a house up, and that in terms of revenue, not only to the project to help with the increment and the street improvements, but it's also revenue to the village. And so when I look at similar parking lots that are here, similar to the ones across from like Duryea that Mr. Blickenstaff just purchased with the Prospect Mall project, those parking spaces right now, parking lots, and this is for a 60-foot by 125, not a 30 by 125, which is shown here, is about $1,900 a year for property tax. If we took a $300,000 house and put it there and assessed it, roundabout, you'd be paying about $9,400 a year in property tax. So it's about a difference of $7,500. And I know the village doesn't get all that. I know it's a percentage, but that's a difference in the economics also to the village, as well as that's one less family that's living in the village. And I know since we moved to the Heights and we have 2 kids going out at least 3 times because of different activities to eat in the Heights, that's 3 times that we're eating out a week. that's revenue and sales tax coming to the Heights. And that doesn't count any of like the ice cream and the festivals and all the other stuff that they're here for that we now participate because we do live in the Heights. So from an economic standpoint, really option 3 is not really viable for us from a builder standpoint, and it's not, I wouldn't think, the best economic condition for the Heights, but that's, to put it that way.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On your option 1, on the diagonal parking,
Yes.
how much are you giving up of your property to move those in?
2 to 3 feet.
2 to 3 feet? Okay. And you're saying that widening the drive line from what I'm looking at, it's the old one. Okay, 16 feet instead of 12.6. Okay. And if on the other side of the street, if you use the existing drive cutout there, and if you're using it for your new, whatever else is going to be built there, I'll say. So you could park there anyway. And then down a little farther from that, for curb. What I'm just wondering is, keeping it open, if that was going to be used for your, whatever the next phase is over there, well, I get into that. If there was either, number 1, either no parking on that side, or number 2, if you're using that for entrance ways into whatever the next development phase is, there would be no parking there anyway.
You're talking about the north side?
Yeah.
Correct. Well, no. Parking on the street,
Yes, right now.
we're assuming that would stay as is, like they would be able to park on the street. It would just be, we would be removing the drive lanes for those properties on the north side of Samuel that we have control over, but I think what you're asking is if we reduce those driveways and have them coming from the rear of the property, we would be similar to kind of what we're doing with 1310 and 1314, taking out I would say the missing parking space along the street, and people would be able to park where now they could not because there's a driveway. Is that what you're, yeah. Yeah, so we would be increasing parking in that manner on the north side as well.
Yeah, I was just looking at the cutout there in the curb now that is egress into that lot. If that is not used as a parking space or 2, but it's a very wide one, if you're not using it for whatever future development is, then that's a help for traffic going by, is what I'm getting at. And if you're going to put other entrances into whatever's going to go there from that would help traffic flow too. I'm looking at this diagonal parking from a standpoint of you don't want to tie up the street. You've already come into your property, and I'll be quite frank with you, is that what you have at 4,500, I'm not a fan of because it's a big truck or double crew cab truck or a big Suburban type park there. You can't hardly turn out of the bank because they're hanging into the driveway. And if somebody's coming off Prospect, turning, they have to stop. If somebody's going off the bank and all that, it's not a proper deal. But what I'm trying to get in my mind is you're bringing this in 3 feet farther, and then applying it to that street down there. If that was in 3 foot farther, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Okay.
And Craig, there's a couple things with that I would love to talk with you after the fact. That, I mean, it's not regards to this project, but with that parking. Yeah.
Well, it was worth a try. Okay.
Wasn't under my control. Sadly, it wasn't under my control.
Oh, go ahead, Tessie, go.
Well, I just, along with what Craig was saying, had a question. So right now, in terms of the driveways that have been there, that are going to be removed, if you were just going with the 5 on-street parking, which I forgot when that is, which version 2. So you're basically on the south side increasing 1 space of public parking. And then on the, how many, I know there's at least 1 current driveway on the north side. Is there more than that of those, the lots that you own currently, the houses that are currently down? I know there's 1 drive, like there was.
Oh, the houses that are currently down?
Yeah, how many driveways were, I'm just wondering when those become single-family homes with garages on the back, which is still my understanding, how many parking spots will be gained by that? I'm trying to figure out if it's all on-street parking, version 2, how many, because of the new development, getting rid of those driveways, how many total north and south will be added? You may have already said that, but I wasn't.
No, I didn't actually. I didn't consider that, so appreciate the question. Right now, with the lot that's there, that has been there for years, there's 1.
Okay.
Because that actually is a double lot
Okay.
from the original plat. And then the one that we just demoed, there was 1 driveway there. And then of all, I mean, then we can go into like everything that we would control on that side. But
I was just, so there could be 3 just in that spot right there without going all the way down the street right now.
Absolutely.
The ones that are, okay.
yeah, and it's hard to kind of say those total spots because, as we all know, people don't park exactly how we measure it.
Right, yeah.
So we could get more, we could get a little less.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Go ahead. I don't know.
So 2 to 3 feet into the property,
Yes.
you're on a 30-degree angle. You're saying it's 20, what was the width of the street, 23?
23.9, sorry, 23.9.
Okay. So that leaves me an aisle at the end of the parking spots.
Sorry, just so people, Sarah can't hear you.
Yeah. That leaves an aisle from curb to the back of the lot, how much? I mean, back of the parking space, how much?
From the curb to the back of the parking space?
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Can I steal yours because I left mine?
It says 19.
So right now, from the back of the curb to where that hangs out into the street, it's 19 feet.
19 out of the 29. Okay. All right.
Yep. Sorry, thanks, Mark. There wasn't so many hands.
Now? Okay. First of all, I want to applaud you for listening to the last meeting and making some of the changes that we asked you to make. I've been looking at this a lot lately, and Tessie and I were out there, walking around the property, measuring. I'd like to go on record, and I realize that's not what we're discussing right at this moment, but it is pertinent that I think that this building in its entirety is way too tall for this space, and it's out of scale. But that being said, I want to say that I think option 1 is probably the best option for what we're being offered here today. I like the angled parking. I think it's really mitigates the problem. I drive that street every day, like 10 times a day, and you're weaving in and out. It's unsightly, it's dangerous, that type of thing. And I think that the angled parking, as long as it's treated properly, and what Craig mentioned, the 4500 building, I don't think those spots are deep enough. But from looking at this, these are a lot deeper, and it gives us more parking for commercial use in that area, which is needed with Leaves and Beans and those types of businesses there, and also for people visiting other residents within this building. So I think it's going to alleviate some of the parking issues on that street. We may want to add signage that says, no pickup trucks. I mean, I think the average length of a pickup truck is like 18 feet. Actually, a Nissan pickup truck is 15.8. I looked these up because I was measuring my own.
I was going to say, I don't have that dimension.
But, maybe that's something we want to look at so people aren't just,
My SUV is 18 feet.
18 feet, yeah. So maybe that, and this is 19, right? So if it was a 19-foot car. Or
My
truck.
van is 20.
Okay, so maybe let's look at no vans.
I've had my van and my SUV over there twice this week, pulling in and out, seeing, measuring, chalk lines.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that maybe signage really would be helpful in that way. But we may not all agree on, but I think this is an attractive design, and it does help with the parking issue. And let's see, was there anything else? And the other thing I like about that is I think it's interesting how the sidewalk jogs in that plan. I think it adds dimension to the property. And because this building is so big, I think that just not having a block, like a box there, and having some depth to that, depth changes helps. And I hope that these trees that you're putting in are not just little sprouts. I hope they're like 8 foot when you put them in, like tall.
Yeah, no, I always, it's a love-hate with the landscape code in certain areas, is they always want these trees in front of commercial spaces.
Yeah.
Well, the commercial spaces want to be seen, because the more they're seen, people can actually go to them. So that's what I thought was great, was that there wasn't a front yard or a landscape code in the heights, so we had something to play with. And what we look at is having more of that tree go up and taller, and then be able to branch out, whether it may be a flowering tree, which is always more maintenance, but it's prettier. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
you're
it
talking
looks
about-
nice.
I'm sorry, I should have specified. That's the front view on Samuel, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But I'm really worried about these neighbors with this building, and I think that the more privacy they can have, the better. So, you know, on that side, I hope that they're tall trees. I know they have a 6-foot privacy fence. That is the aspect of this project that's bothering me the most. But you're within code, so that's, you know.
Yeah, and we did, and we in essence pushed back, because landscaping, while it's pretty, is always very expensive, and so we talked at length about those trees and about the kinds they would be, and that they would be kind of a skinnier tree that would grow taller, because one of our concerns was the root system with the fence of the adjacent neighbor, and then also with the building itself. If we had anything over there outside, would, you know, because the roots extend as far as the leaves of a tree do. So, you know, we always tell homeowners and business owners, if your branches are going over the building, your roots are right up against your foundation. And so, you know, one way that they try and solve that is to cut the leaves back and make the roots go deeper, but it's a fine balance. And that was one of our concerns with putting the trees there. I think we have found a nice solution for that would go taller, but they wouldn't be as wide. Yeah, because the wide trees, they would definitely be an invasive. And through that, I didn't put this on there, I apologize, but we had to relocate where our water line was coming in, again, to make sure that the root system doesn't penetrate that, those pipes and cause issues. So there was some juggling that had to go on there. And then, actually the diagonal parking, it's 19 feet from like that to that, but as the angle, it actually does go that full 20. But if you kind of cut it straight across, that's the 19 feet.
Okay.
Do you know what the tree is going to be?
I do, but I don't have that off the top of my head, because we fought back on the width and the length, but there was a couple different suggestions. I don't know, Rick, do you remember what we were talking about in those meetings? I can get you that detail.
We were talking about like a green giant arborvitae, not the kind that are just like 8 feet, but the kind that get to be like 30 feet tall.
Yes.
And stay 5 feet wide. That was
What you're
one.
talking about, I wish I can't remember the exact name.
Starts
but
with
we
the T,
can get it.
Thalula or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Thula.
Taller than this is, or?
I'm sorry?
But I mentioned Kathy, on your side, you put evergreens in. I mentioned the liquid amber tower, secluded, color, because they're straight up. If you remember what the old Lombardy poplars used to use, well, like on the corner of Kirkland, that fall apart after 20 years. These don't. They're sweet gum tree.
What was it?
And you can see them if you go out to the medical facility there across from Menards.
OSF on Allen, or Methodist on Allen?
If you pull around at the back of the parking lot, you'll see those there, because they're going up now 3 stories tall, and they're probably only 6 foot wide. Now, those are deciduous, but they keep their leaves most all year, most weekends do. And those are excellent trees for something like where you don't want room, you want to go up.
Yeah, because I didn't want, I mean, if we have a big tree, then why have a side yard? It's going to be a tree.
Well, if they're going to have the windows, roughly 8 foot apart between windows, and you hit a wall, well, they're parked in between windows, so you look out and you see the tree, but they're not keeping your view. So
Yeah.
they're a nice tree to look at, and they're hardy.
Craig, what did you say that was? I couldn't hear.
Liquid amber.
Liquid amber. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You want to make sure that you want it to get column type. The regular is a big tree like a maple. Okay? It's got a big 5 leaf like maple. So you don't want that one, which you want to say, well, I got one in my backyard, but it's big. You want the columnar one that's right out there.
Columnar one. Okay.
And then they're under a variety.
They probably hybrid something to solve that problem, or
Yeah, and I don't know where I can't tell you where they got it from when they landscaped that place. But,
okay. Yeah, I can reach out to them and see what that is.
Kate, is the plan for the utilities to be buried?
Say that again.
Is the plan for the utilities to be buried on that street in general? I know they will be for this property, right?
When you say very, you mean like individually metered?
Buried, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
buried,
Not buried.
sorry.
Buried
In
underground.
here. Yeah, part of the infrastructure improvements that we were looking to do and got the cost estimates initially was to take the utilities underground, which would help solve a couple issues with outage when we get strong winds and stuff like that. And we have to be very creative about it with the properties that are existing. But we've consulted at that time we were getting estimates with, but the intent is to bury them when we do the infrastructure.
Okay, because just in terms of the parking, so I know Beth prefers version 1. I actually would prefer version 2, and I'll give you a couple reasons why. For one, I don't mind the diagonal parking, that we have in the Heights. I agree that 4,500 on the side of that one is a little short, but it's also on Duryea on the side of Bella Grove there. I believe we have it on the side of Oliver's, a couple of different spaces. Every place we have those, though, it's a commercial on the opposite side of it. To me, it seems odd that if you're going to have, 3 or 4, at least 3 single-family homes that are going to be looking out on, the back of cars. I mean, I know there's already street parking, but to me, a row of the back of cars is less desirable than the street parking. And we are gaining at least some spots. I know also even one of the buildings that's not, I know like 1319 Samuel is going to be demolished. I know I was there the other day, and there's a renter there that's parking on the street. So I'm also assuming some of the resident parking might get moved to the back. So, I mean, there's another reason too why I prefer this is I actually like the extra, because it looks like there's the green space that would be between the sidewalk and the parked cars. There'd be a significant amount of green space where you could put much significantly larger deciduous trees, kind of giving that. I mean, because to me, we've already lost a lot of trees on that street with the demolition and everything. And so, I mean, I think the goal, particularly when we have a street where we have buried utility lines, to have the ability to kind of put those trees back in, mature trees that give it the streetscape. I mean, and you're talking about it being pretty, but it's not just pretty. It really does make the environment much more attractive and livable for people that are on it. Also, I have the same issue Beth has with just the size of this building. And if there were trees in the front there that were going to develop into mature trees, I mean, that to me helps soften just the bulk of the building itself. I was in the meeting where we were talking about the evergreens. I mean, I know you enlarged that to 10 feet. Beth and I were talking about whether or not you could put trees on that side as well. I just think those larger trees would really help for the neighbors to soften it. So in my opinion, having the street parking, and if nothing else, if there's going to be a streetscape that's going to be redone, I mean, perhaps, get the building built, see how the parking goes before we go into the diagonal parking. I think could be added later, as long as you haven't put in the trees. But anyways, I just think that there is going to be some gain gaining. We may not gain the entire eight spaces, but there is, it sounds like at least probably 4 spots being gained. And I think the ability to have, I don't know what that measurement is. I don't know if I see one there, but to be able to have, 4 or 5 mature trees in the front there that could be larger than the ones you're talking about that would be closer to the building, I think would be really important.
Yeah, and and I appreciate that, because that's one of the things when we did talk about the infrastructure improvements is to definitely have those tree-lined streets
Right.
with the sidewalks on both sides, because to me, I think that really sets the tone. Like, you go into some of those older neighborhoods, and I was at St. Phil's the other weekend, and those side streets are just gorgeous with the trees.
Well, because they've got
and
their utilities probably going through the alleys, and that's one thing we don't have here in the Heights, and so the trees have to be cut back or smaller. So I agree with you. The mature trees that create a canopy over the street, it makes for a really inviting street to live on.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is exactly the look and feel we want to go when we create that. And the diagonal parking, and I even hesitated throwing the option 1 out initially, and then I know, kind of asking the staff to say, is this a safety issue, and in the different areas, and where is it if there's accidents happening, and I kind of got motivated when Kathy and Rick came and talked to the BDD committee and said that looking at other parking solutions, even along Prospect, to kind of get more parking with what we have now as opposed to adding parking lots. And there was a mention of a potential of diagonal. They were just, she was throwing out ideas. And so then I kind of thought, and looked at, again, the different side streets. And I didn't even put Oliver's on our list, but yeah, there's diagonal parking there, is that we already have that precedent through. And so if we can make it and then look at, if it's a matter of, width and length, can we work with that a little bit to get it?
Yeah, but the distinction of all those places having commercial on the other side, I think, is an important distinction.
Yeah, and right now, where it's zoned is B1 right across, and the house that's right at the alley that runs parallel with Prospect, right now that house is, we don't own that house, so that would stay a commercial use.
Right.
And, the other house, which is right next to it, that is one that I have under contract pending this decision to purchase and build our house on. So, and I would say I'm fine with it, obviously knowing what's going in there. And then we actually do have the house next to it, the lot next to it, that is under contract pending the result of this, if we had to use that lot for a parking lot versus a house.
But if you had the street parking there, you would have significant space to put a much larger trees, because you wouldn't have to worry about the root systems, because they're quite a bit removed from the building, correct? Okay.
And that, on one hand, we can kind of play with dimensions, but we wanted to have a nice yard as well. So if any of the residents have, a little dog that they want to take out, they have an area that's not too far away from the building that they could go out into. So maintain that green space in front of the building.
Do you have any other questions? Does anybody else have other questions?
I have one there. The elevation of the grounds around the building, are they remaining the same as it is now?
The elevations have been fun to work with, because we have entrance on really we have entrances on all 4 sides of the building. So we've had to do some really intense work inside the building to make sure there's ADA access continued throughout, and work with inside the building to make that without changing a lot of the exterior. If we could work together once this gets approved to reduce some of those slopes, because I know that, I scratch my car. I can't come in off Duryea through that back alley. I take it, scratch it. My husband's not happy with me. So I have to go the other way, and it's less intense, but I have to angle in. So if we could work together on those elevations, it'd be great. But we have had to do some really intense work inside with adding some ramps and to make those elevations work. So as of right now, we're keeping all the existing elevations the same, assuming that nothing's changing.
Okay, Okay, this time we'll have, if anybody in the audience would like to make a comment or have any questions, we'll give each person maximum of 5 minutes to speak if you'd want to speak about anything. But you'll have to come up here, state your name and address, and so.
Hi, I'm Lee Harper. I live at 1311 East Samuel Avenue. The bottom line is you're destroying the value of my property because I don't have any parking. I'm a business there. Now you're going to put 11 spaces right there in the front, and they're going to be public parking. They won't be public parking because the building that's right there doesn't have enough parking for its tenants. Now who's going to park down the street when there's the parking and there's my house? Nobody's going to park there. Those spaces will never be public parking. They will be used by the building. When that is all full, where are you going to park? You're going to park on the other side of the street where I live and where I run a business, and I have no parking. It will all be taken up. The housing that as it goes down the street is to be dense housing. That was the word that we were using. And if it is dense housing, that means that the people that come to visit at this house have a crowded street down this way that they cannot park. The parking is supposed to go in through the back to where people can park into their alleys. Well, any company you have is not going to be able to park. There is no 4th of July or Thanksgivings or anything where you're going to have a place to park. So across the street where those buildings are, there's parking. Why would you come to my place when you can park across the street and there's no problem? So you won't have parking there. This is taking up all the parking. Secondly, you are congesting the street. Now, one of the things that men don't know, but every woman in here knows, is that a woman never in her mind is missing one thought, and it is her safety. And when a woman stands on that street corner at Leaves and Beans, when she looks over at this building, if this is a congested building with no parking, no nothing, what is the look? By the same way, a man that looks at that knows how much it costs to eat at the restaurants. It's just the way that people think and the way they do. And I think that seeing that all congested in this crowded street, what you're building is an inner city street. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, you got a mess. And the one thing I would ask all of you here, what did you pay for your home? And what was the income that you had when you paid for your home? And how terrified were you for that debt? What you spent for your house, would you spend it if you did not have a garage? You are parking on the street. And in this area, homes that don't have parking and don't have a garage are not of value. I can prove my case. Ask the county. And if you got a 2-car attached garage on your home, it's worth a heck of a lot more than a place that has no garage and no place to park. Now you're building glamorous condos, that's the way it's told to me, and now they're ending up being 1-bedroom apartments with no place to park. These homes that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath are now turning into 850 square feet. The Heights have tons of very small houses. Just because you slap new siding on it and shove them in close together doesn't mean they'll sell. And I'm very concerned about the resale value, because when all the shine gets off of this and all the polish is gone, what you have is an inner city street that is crowded beyond belief and people have no parking. How many of you up there would buy a home that is in this price point that you cannot park your car? You're parking your car on the street, you're susceptible to vandalism, these people are going to have nice cars. What woman is going to let a husband back her in? You can't get out. What husband's going to let a woman park her in? You ladies know more about that now. But the bottom line is that you're building housing that does not have parking, you're building a building that is too large for the lot, and you're congesting your whole street and setting the tone. Now this street starts with God, it moves to money, and then it starts into charming businesses. Well, if you crowd this all up, it's the Sears block of Peoria is what's going on here. And I think your whole street is going to have a very congested look if you cannot park these cars. And with all those spaces across there, like I say, they are not public parking. They are parking for the building. Parking that hangs out in the street, well, there's the slippery slope. Where are we going to go? How many people are going to all of a sudden want to move their garage back a foot? Are you going to tell them, no, this is a private project that is taking public taxpayer land? Well, where's that going to quit? Are you going to do that on the next place that wants to move in? And like I say, the biggest thing with me is you're making my lot worthless. I can't sell that as a building if I can't park. I can't have State Farm Insurance move in there. There's no place for the employees to park. When it comes to a residence, it's two places. What's going to happen there? The whole shot. When you get right down to it, I'm boxed in. And eventually you can't turn there on the alley, so everybody's going to turn on the alley and hit my garage. By the way, I got a whole set of receipts, and I can prove that case too. So I'm stuck. This whole thing, I'm going to be the guy that's stuck paying for it. And in the end, I think the city needs to decide who's going to pay for the alley, because that alley's going to bite you in the butt. And when it does, is this development going to pay for it ahead of time, or is the city going to pay for it? But there's going to be a problem with your alley. So, my thing is, I'd like you to consider my property. I've been here since 1990. I paid higher water. I paid higher interest to the bank. I put in my time for Peoria Heights, and it's my retirement. 2008 came, and I'm single and live on my own income all my life, and that property is a heck of a lot more important than it was before, and I wouldn't buy it if I'm boxed in and can't park. It's not commercial property anymore.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you.
So that was Lee Harper. So that's...
He made it, so that's it.
Okay, because Craig had a write-up from him. He had met with him, and he had said his preference was option 3, his non-preference is option 1. So just FYI. Does anybody else have...
Don Gorman. I own the property at 1320 East Samuel, and I would like to thank Board Member Craig Masters for bringing up the question because of the site elevation, and because I had spoke the last time that this area in here has a severe drainage problem, and any elevation change in that area may have an impact on my property, and that's one thing that I've seen missing from the previous meeting of a site elevation. How is the site elevation going to change? And that concerns me. And the impact on my tenants in there and other people around, could impact them, because I seen after the last heavy rain we had, water went across the alley down into the neighbor's yard back there, because they're about 2 feet below the alley. So my concern also, and I've heard a lot of good resolve, and I think there's been a lot of hard work by the board, but you do have to take in consideration site development, elevation, and if elevation change, you're going to have probably some flooding. I know the cart's coming first before the horse. I heard that the last meeting. The infrastructure will be fixed afterwards, but site layout is very important.
Thanks, Don. Anyone else?
My name is Jill Mintz. I live at 3915 North Grandview Drive. I'm not a Heights resident, just a frequent patron and fan of the Heights. As I watched that first lot, or the first house get demolished, there were like 3 deciduous trees and a pine that were all healthy. And I know typically with development that's kind of what happens, everything gets mowed down. But I was just curious, just knowing that a lot of the charm and allure of the Heights is all the mature trees. And I was just curious if there was any plan in place that where possible, they could keep the mature trees as that development continues down the block.
I don't know of a plan because I don't know what the plan is for the rest of the block yet, other than they want to build houses, so.
I mean, I just
I
thought it
think
was worth
that those of us on this committee would agree with you, and I will say, from a personal standpoint, I was surprised to see all 4 of those mature trees come down. I thought that was something that especially the 2 in the back corner would have been tagged and preserved. It seemed to me that they were not in the way of the development.
yeah.
So going forward, and that's something we need to talk to the developer about, that they can tag certain trees that could be preserved. Because even if you put in a 12-foot tree, it's not going to be that size in our lifetime.
Probably not, yeah.
So it's definitely something to consider.
Okay, great, thanks.
Anyone else?
My name is Randy Ferris. I live at 1317 East Peoria. My concern is the alley. I don't have a driveway in front of my house. Can't park in front of my house now. But I do have a nice 2-car garage in the back with about 20 foot of driveway, rock driveway. But that alley is awful small. And it's just like the gentleman said about the rain. The other day we had the rain, it looked like a lake out in my backyard because everything slopes down. So I'm worried about that. But I'm also worried about the alley because it's not very big and it's my only parking. The other day when they had people out there, some guy in a pickup truck taking those trees down, I couldn't even get back to my garage. I can't park on the street. My house is zoned 2/3 commercial. Okay. And I've been there probably 18 years. I don't have a problem with the big building going up. I just want to make sure I'm going to be able to get in and out of my property. And also, I'm not a big fan of looking at a big dumpster too right behind me. So, and I believe that they're putting garages up in the back. Is that correct? Is that what I'm seeing? Are they going to be in enough where, not just butted up against the alley?
They are back. They're 22 feet off the property line.
Oh, so they'll be 22 feet in off the back alley?
It is set back quite a bit.
Okay, so then you guys will widen the alley then?
Well, but that's also a parking spot. Those garages will have an indoor garage space, and behind them will be an outdoor space.
Oh, so they can park outside?
Yes.
Okay.
So the building itself is set fairly far back.
Okay.
What we were talking about earlier with the parking spots kind of depends on what kind of car goes back there, how much
Right.
space there'll be.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad. My main concern then would be, I'm not a big fan of the big dumpster. We have commercial properties, that's on the other alley facing Prospect. Got a major raccoon problem around there. Major. And you guys won't let me shoot them, so,
Well, there could be, I don't know if there's been any thought about putting fencing or any sort of that around the dumpster. Is that anything you've thought of? Just
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be a dumpster enclosure, absolutely, because we want it to look.
Okay. Because I don't know about the other tenants, but yeah, my other 2 neighbors there that face Duryea, we all have the same problem. We have a raccoon problem, major. We also have the water runoff. My poor neighbor next to him, he's not here today. His yard really gets it. So
are you in the house directly behind?
Correct.
Okay. Right on the alley?
Yeah, right on
on
the
both alleys?
Yeah, the one with the brown 2-car garage.
Okay. Yeah.
That's mine.
Okay.
So, but that's just my major concern, is mostly the alley.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll close public comments on this agenda item. So I guess for the board, what is...
Can I just ask one thing? I just noticed, and I don't think I saw this earlier, so maybe it's changed it. There's a fencing variance request as well. I don't think that was on the original.
We talked about it in the,
Well, there was originally a front yard fence, and then she took it out. Is it back in?
Look, well, this is our hard copies we got here today have that, but what we were emailed didn't have it.
Okay.
So I just wasn't.
So what is
Well, we
the
were
fence?
emailed the packet several weeks ago, or at least a good week and a half.
So I don't know, do you want to come up and explain where the fence is that you're talking about here? I just noticed that.
Sorry, I pulled that off.
That's okay.
It's very similar to last time where we had the fence and it was approved. It just moved a little bit with the side yard. Sorry.
Yes, I don't think that was on I didn't notice that before on the ones we were emailed, so it's a front yard decorative fence.
Yeah, let me see. Maybe. There we go. So yeah, I kind of want to turn this screen for you, but Tessie, it's right here right along the edge of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I can see it now on the plan. I just didn't see it on the plans I was looking at this weekend, so I just wanted to.
It's very similar. I know that I believe had passed last time, the fence variance, but we moved it, I think, a foot because of the side yard setback. So that's why we felt that we would probably have to go for it again since it wasn't in that exact position.
Okay.
But similar design and everything we talked about last time.
And it's the same on all three of these, right? It is, I see it.
I think it
It is, yeah.
It's closer on version like 1 because of the parking, but it's the same.
Closer to the building.
Closer to the building.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I just noticed it.
So I'm not sure how we want to take into account the three options. Do we want to vote on all three options? Do we feel we can consensus on one option and vote on one option?
I mean, is there anyone that we can eliminate? I would eliminate number 3 right away.
I would too.
No, I wouldn't, so I guess we're going to
So we're
vote
gonna have to
on
vote.
all three options. I'm trying to think though, I mean, there's a possibility that all three options would pass, and then we're not going to send three options to the village board, so how do you want to narrow this down?
Straw vote.
Yeah, like who's voting for, who wants what option?
I've never encountered this scenario where you had choices. Usually it's a site plan and you vote it up or you vote it down.
Or can we just say which option we all choose and go from there?
And then we'll go from there, and then we,
Yeah, I'll just,
I mean, 'cause if-
I'll keep tally of it.
okay. So Craig,
So we pick two?
in order of options, just say which order you would take them in.
Okay. 3, 1, 2. 2, keep the same, that doesn't do anything.
Yep, so 3, 1.
So you want 3, 1, 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would vote option 1 as it was presented as my option 1, option 2 as my second, and option 3 as my third.
So 1, 2, 3.
Option 1 is the diagonal parking?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in the same boat.
3 is the only option I would vote for.
We have to, okay.
I'd vote no on the other two.
Okay.
I would be a 2, 1, 3.
Okay.
2, 1, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Just as we talk about option 1.
Sure.
I don't know if you all got the communication, though, that there's another ordinance that the village board would actually have to pass to allow the diagonal parking. So diagonal parking is only allowed by ordinance. So it would be a recommendation on the site plan, but then if they adopted that site plan, then
It comes back to us
no, they would have to also pass an ordinance for diagonal parking in that area.
in that area. Okay.
So
So that would be a contingency if you approve that site plan, it would be contingent
on them passing an ordinance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can we make it contingent if they don't pass that, we would allow a different option? Like, let's say we chose that.
Yeah,
They say no.
as a recommending body, I don't have any problem with approving 2 alternative site plans
Okay.
with a recommendation for one as the preference over the other, but voting positively on 2 alternatives.
Okay.
I don't think there's going to be a consensus on all 3 alternatives, so to the extent there is consensus on 2, I think that,
Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
So of those, it looks like
So like number 3 is last on everybody except,
Craig and I.
yeah, except for you and Craig.
So obviously 1 or 2 would be the ones that we're voting on.
Correct. How I would take it based on our polling.
Okay. I think can we go through this for both options? Because really, I don't think our answers are going to be much different
correct.
on these for option 1 or 2 per se. Yeah.
You're gonna tell me which one.
I cleaned my bag up to go on vacation and stuff. I left my glasses out, my pens out. Oh, no, I can't. I do remember the pens.
So come back and find me. For option 1.
Correct. And I think, but unless as we're answering these, if you think that your answer for 1 or 2 would be completely different, then let's talk about that. But other than that, we'll just fill one of these out for both options and then.
Okay. So we're doing both at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use or site plan will not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comforts, or general welfare. Yes, no, or NA?
So that's a yes. We don't think that it will.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah, this is worded strangely.
So
that
yes.
it's
It is a little
yes,
tricky, but
everybody.
you need to answer everything yes in order to approve.
Oh, okay. Then yes, we do not.
The special use or site plan will not be injurious to the uses and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values with the neighborhood in which it is to be located. This is what I would say no on for personally.
But this only
But this is,
pertinent to the variance request,
That's-
not to, for example, the height of the building.
this is the site plan. This is the site plan.
We're
Not the variance, but just the site plan.
Well, then,
So this would, yeah, so I feel differently with this one on the 2. I feel like version 2, where there could be more trees, because the height and the mass of the building is, I find, to be an issue. So I find version 2 to be more, will be better for the enjoyment of the property, the adjacent properties, if we don't have the diagonal party and we have the larger trees. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So,
I mean, I hear what you're saying.
yeah, I mean,
But
so how do we?
here's one thing. Last time I was asking all these details, everybody told me, we're voting on a site plan, not details. That's what I heard.
Well, that's, I'm
We're
speaking
voting on
to,
2 site plans though right now. We're voting on,
No, we're voting on basically parking, what we're basically voting on, not the site plan. Site plan here, we're basically voting on parking.
but that's
We're
part
voting
of
on the site plan.
But the site plan isn't really changing except for parking.
Right, correct.
Okay, but if you remember, I kept asking you last time, where does the detail start or begin or end? And to where he's voting on the site plan, not on the details. Okay, so
Were
you
you,
get reading into this,
you're right, we can't vote on the details of the infrastructure that we don't know about because the way the agreement was set up was the village will discuss infrastructure after a site plan is approved. So whether I like it or not, that's where we're at.
okay, so your second question, when you're saying will substantially diminish or impair property value.
The way you know it today, the way you know this site plan today.
Well, don't really have enough detail to know if Don's house is gonna be flooded out in a 2-inch rain or not.
But I don't think we're ever going to have that answer, right? Ever. Like, that answer's never going to happen to this board.
Well, I'm sure an engineer could figure that out. But I'm just saying,
Well, but
I guess I don't know where
infrastructure will
details
change
end
that.
at.
You know, Mark, can you guide us a little bit in that, any clearly then?
No, the details of infrastructure and things like that, that's going to be part of the building permit process and the, inspection process as they build. So, yeah, those are things that need to be addressed, but they're not going to get to the permit point without site plan approval. So this step does have to come first.
So that's not something that we can even consider right today?
Yeah, I don't think that you would deny site plan approval because they haven't taken the step that can only come after site plan approval yet. Then they're kind of caught in a,
Thanks for explaining that.
So we can't say that they're gonna be injurious to the property.
So we have some yeses and some nos on this
So
one.
then what do we do?
Because depending on the option.
You're
Right,
going to
so-
want to go
Each one at a
option
time.
one and have a vote on each one of these to
Okay.
see if you can get a consensus.
Okay, so let's go back. This is option one. First, question one's yes. Question two for option one.
I'm a no on that. for
I'm
option
a
one.
yes on option one for number two. Question number two.
Question number two.
You're-
We're voting on option one.
We're voting on option one, and I think that it will not be injurious to the uses and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted.
Okay, so Craig is a no. That's the yes.
No, because if you're taking away some of my details,
So you're saying it is injurious to the neighborhood?
He hasn't responded yet.
if you was allowing me to say that the water runoff and other stuff is gonna be affecting the site plan, yes, but if I go straight by the site plan, I gotta say, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Because you're gonna fix it later.
Okay.
That's what you're telling me. So,
I'm a yes.
I'm a no. Tessie's a no.
I'm a no.
Yes or no?
no. Yes.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses and 3 nos.
And 3 no's.
That was for option one.
Yep.
Then we voted as yes.
I think it's,
So let's just go down through the whole list and then somebody will make the motion and we'll vote on the motions.
Right.
The establishment of the special use or site plan will not impede normal or orderly development, improve the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes? Yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but on question 2, we only answered that for option 1.
Yep, that's what we're doing.
We're only doing
This-
option.
We're only
Now
doing
we're only
option.
doing
Yep.
option.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, we were
Sorry,
first.
yeah, I know. I know.
It's too confusing to do them together.
Adequate facilities, access roads, drainage, and or necessary facilities have been or will be provided.
hopefully they will be, so yes.
I feel like we can't answer that. I feel like that's an NA.
It's NA for us.
Okay? Everybody agree with that?
Yeah. This is the drainage issue.
Adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets.
Yes. Yes.
I think we're all yes on that. If a public use or providing public utility service that's such a service, that's an NA for this one. And then the special use or site plan in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as regulations may in each instance be modified pursuant to the recommendations of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, that's saying it's like within code, right?
Yep.
So yes, it is.
Rick, something that I think everybody needs to keep in mind that might solve a lot of these issues, you can impose conditions. And it sounds to me like there's at least some people on the board that would like a condition to be that there's an adequate drainage plan. There's adequate, you know, and so perhaps some people can get to a yes by having their yes conditioned upon approval by the city engineer, the village engineer, that the drainage is adequate, given changes in elevation and you know, everything else that's going to come with as the development progresses. So, you know, I would recommend considering those conditions, the things that you want to see a yes on, but you just don't have enough at this stage to be confident.
So like number 4, we could switch to a yes if we said we put the drainage specifically in there. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, I like.
But I mean, I think we leave them as NA and you put the conditions on. There's conditions on the bottom down here. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
On 7, I think that's a no, because it does not provide for off-street parking. Okay, so now we need a motion to approve this request for site plan and any conditions. So we talked about a proper drainage plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the proper drainage plan.
Sarah?
And what? And tall trees. Yeah.
Tall trees, where's that
Mature
at?
trees. Mature trees.
But where?
Well, they can't
Yeah,
put
they can't.
mature.
They can't, okay.
Yeah, just drink proper drainage.
You got me writing stuff that can't go in here. Okay, moved by Sarah, second?
I second.
Probably spelled your name wrong, Elizabeth. 2 C's? That's what I always do. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Sarah and Elizabeth, with proper drainage plans condition. Any other conditions?
Just to clarify, this is for version 1 with
Version
the
1.
diagonal
Yep,
parking.
option 1.
Make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay, call the roll.
Rick Pitzel.
Nay.
Beth Kazan. Yay. Tessie Buckler.
Nay?
Sarah DeBoer. Yay. Steve Katie.
Yay.
Mike Wu.
Yeah.
Craig Masters.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so with option 1, I believe that no parking variance would be required, assuming that we're allowing the on-street parking to qualify as for this project. So that eliminates the parking variance aspect of this application, because we have a combined application, and until we know which site plan is being
Correct.
approved, we can't address, so there is no parking variance requirement.
I think, don't they need the parking variance for either one? Because even if they do the diagonal parking, it's not their own parking.
Okay.
So I think they need it either way, don't they?
I think it's appropriate to
commercial
address, I
space.
guess, either way,
So we
yes.
could put the fence and the parking in on the variance
Yes.
when we go through that.
So do we want to go with the other site plan then?
Yes.
Option 2,
Yep.
right?
Glad you made a lot of copies of these, Mark.
I figured you'd need some.
Okay, option 2.
Here's the waiver, right?
Yep.
This is
is option 2 site plan with no diagonal parking in front, right?
No parking requirement for building.
Well, this isn't the variance for parking. We're not doing that right now. We're just doing this.
Just the site plan without diagonal parking.
Yeah, but that's what you're asking for.
Yep, exactly.
Parking waiver for commercial parking spaces.
And when we do the variance request for that, we'll do that. The waiver part comes with the variance. Okay, so this is just site plan without diagonal parking.
Okay.
Okay. Number 1.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
for number 1.
Number 1, yes.
But we're doing this again.
Option 2, number 1. Option 2, number 2. Special use site plan not be interested in enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, et cetera. Craig? The answer no on the other one, right?
It's the same as that one, right?
Yeah, okay.
I'm a yes.
Yes?
I'm a no.
2, 3 no's.
I'm a yes, but for this one, I'd like to put a condition in that there would be
Mature trees.
large, scale, there wouldn't be mature, but large scale deciduous trees between the sidewalk and the street.
Okay. 2, 3. Yep. 4. Yes. So kind of split there, 4, 4. 3, establishing a special use site plan will not impede the normal orderly development improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Craig? Number 3.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Number 4.
I guess we need to.
I guess we'll just
drainage
put
this one.
NA and put drainage in. Number 5, adequate measures have been taken to provide ingress and egress design and minimize traffic congestion in public streets. Yes?
Yes.
Number 6 is NA. Number 7, special use site plan in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the districts which is located. And again, I'm saying no because of the parking.
I'm saying yes.
Yes.
Okay. So motion for option 2.
I'll make a motion.
So Tessie, seconded by, any seconds? Elizabeth?
No, I seconded the first one.
You're easy. Okay,
The stipulation, the motion to approve with the stipulation of drainage.
Drainage and.
and trees. So
large-scale
conditions
trees.
are mature, large, deciduous trees between sidewalk and street, and proper drainage plan. Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Rick Bitzel.
Nay.
Elizabeth Kazam. Yay. Jesse Buckler.
Yay.
Sarah DeBoer. Yay. Steve Katie.
Nay.
Did you say nay? Mike Wu.
Yes.
Craig Masters.
Same as the other one. No, 5, 2, 4, 3. Okay. Okay. On the fence, on the variance side, so we have the fence, the front yard fence, and in option 2, well, actually at both options, we are waiving the commercial on-property parking. So it's the same variance request for both of them.
It is, it just has a different net effect, depending on which site.
Correct. But I mean, from a variance standpoint.
Yeah, it's the same
I think we
variance.
only have to go through this variance one once because
I agree.
waiving parking and we're allowing the fence.
I mean, unless someone was willing to waive the parking for one of the site plans but not the other. I mean, I hate to,
Yeah, I mean, they both pass, so.
yeah, okay.
So we're voting on the
So we're voting on,
fence and the parking at the same time?
Yep.
Okay.
Look at, in our zoning code 10-9-7 permitted area.
That's the section that, so if you go down to the last box, it says retail stores and shops, 1 per 300 square feet. So 1 per the 2,400 square feet would have been 8 parking spots, and that's what we're waiving.
That's what option 2 is, right, to waive those.
And option 1, because the parking is not off-street parking.
But option 1 would give a diagonal parking back.
Yeah, but it's not.
Public.
It's public.
It can't be considered their commercial parking.
So
even though it would-
so I think what we're waiving on both of them, the 8 spaces
Got it. All right.
for commercial.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the waiver of parking, 8 spaces. Option 1 and 2, and the front yard fence.
And, okay, so the fence is 3 feet tall with 4-foot pillars.
Is that right?
Exactly the same as last week.
Okay.
3-foot, 4-foot pillars. Okay, will the strict application of the terms and zoning related to the use, construction, or alteration of building structures to the use of the land impose practical difficulties or particular hardship upon the petitioner? I say no, but it hasn't got to me yet.
Whatever we're talking about here is going to impose a hardship on the petitioner.
So what it's basically asking is the waiver of the parking spots and the front yard fences, the fact that we are granting a variance for that, is that a particular hardship on the developer that they can't overcome?
No.
I'm sorry, you have to be more clear because I'm fine with the fence.
Yeah.
So then that would be,
And- Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
But then on the parking is the same thing, you're fine with the
Also
parking?
fine with it, but I
Okay.
think that we have more options with the parking,
Yeah.
option 1. Yeah.
Understand that, that's the site plan, yep. So yeah, no, yes,
Yes. I'm a yes.
yes, no.
It says the land is proposed.
I guess I'm a yes. I mean, I don't know that there's a hardship with the fence.
I think that's what was confusing us
Right.
too.
Yeah,
Right,
but I
it's
don't
just
have
kind
a
of
problem with it.
Confusing verbiage, but
The fence is kind of, you have to have a variance to have a front yard fence.
Right.
That's the point. So,
Right. So I'm a yes.
yes. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes. If the variation is granted, the property affected by the variation will remain in harmony with general purposes and intent of the zoning code.
The intent of the zoning, yeah.
I'm a yes. I'm a yes.
I'm a no.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
The approval of a variation will not merely serve as a convenience to the petitioner, but is necessary to alleviate some demonstrable hardship on the petitioner.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Can the variation requested by the petitioner be granted without substantial detriment to the public good?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And can the proposed variation be approved without impairing the general purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan as implemented by the zoning code?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And if the proposed variance involves a fence, will the fence conform with standards set forth in the subsection of the zoning code? I think everybody can say yes to that, all right?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a motion to waive the 8 parking spaces for option 1 and 2, and the front yard fence, 3 foot with 4 foot pillars.
I'll make a motion.
Who said that?
Mike,
Was it Steve? You.
Steve seconded. Any conditions? Okay, call the roll.
Rick Pitzel.
Nay. Nay on the parking, yay on the fence.
Are we doing them together?
It don't matter, it's gonna pass, keep going.
Beth Kazam, yay. Tessie Buckler,
Yay.
Sarah DeVore, yay. Steve Katie,
Yay.
Mike Wu,
Yay.
Craig Masters.
Yay.
6 to 1. All right. That is the end of that. So that'll go, those 2 options then will go, I believe, tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
They're on the agenda for the village board, so.
And the site plan, just so the audience, the site plan is a recommendation.
The site plan is a recommendation to the village board, so that goes to the village board, I believe, tomorrow night. And they will do their voting and discussion on it.
Yep, and
Actually, they cannot approve it tomorrow night because by code, the public has 10 days to file an objection.
okay.
I did, okay. I thought it was on their agenda, maybe I misspoke, sorry.
It may be that,
Maybe for discussion?
Okay.
certainly.
All right. Well, I wanted to say real quick, thank you to everybody on the zoning board for your time and consideration and feedback on this. I think the plan is better, and we're looking forward to getting started soon. And on the, Craig, to your point on the concern with the drainage, we will make sure that we don't go on to other people's property. We've been the victim on the other side of that, so we'll definitely make sure that happens. And we currently have that same situation that the man expressed with his driveway is when it rains, we have a
And so,
swimming pool.
I would have voted yes for option 3 all the way through, but I just don't like the parking options on the other 2, so.
I understand. Thank you.
But I mean, as far as the building goes, I would have been fine with it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ken.
Yeah, we got lots more to do. And I'm not sure if, okay. Next on the agenda is the ordinance for amending Title 10 of the Village Code, Village of Peoria Heights, for the purpose of adding a new Chapter 12, providing zoning regulations for solar energy systems. I believe everybody on the board saw the, was distributed a copy of the version.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows, we had a couple meetings with Mark individually just to try and make sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed on this before we got to this point. So,
Is this, Rick, I have a question. Is this, we had talked about like the fencing being solid and there being a buffer area on the exterior of the fence. I don't see that on this one. I had it on, I know, a copy that I had seen.
It's possible the one that got distributed might not have been the...
I don't think it's the one that you had.
The one that I have in section 10-12-4D, screening, says all ground mount SES installations shall be completely surrounded by a solid fence 8 feet in height.
Yeah.
yep.
Wait, where is that at?
4D.
Oh, I don't have a 4D.
I don't have that.
I don't know. Maybe I'm missing a page.
I'm talking about the one, this is the one that I got online, and I always go by that. I don't look at the ones I get tonight, per se. So.
Yeah, we only go to 12 or 10-12-4C.
Yeah, I added screening to the second draft, so you're looking at the first draft. I apologize if the proper one.
I think a page somehow got lost or something.
Next page.
It ain't no.
Yeah, this is the one I used in the meeting when we were talking about it. But yeah, I'm sorry. So see, we only go to 4 and then we go to 10-12-5. So we don't have D. Yeah, we don't have that.
So it's in the one she mailed, though, because that's the one I'm looking at.
Okay. Well, you can have it. Okay. Do you want to? Yeah.
And the reason Craig probably has it is because he gets a copy of the one that gets mailed to us.
Okay.
So it seems like the one she printed for tonight's the wrong one.
Okay. Was there anything else major that would be missing from that? I know, that's what I'm...
So this has the red line, right? This is what you added?
This
So
might have
this
been
has residential zoning
my notes when I
districts.
read it.
So B, on that same section, B, has some changes.
Residential zoning district shall not be primary.
Yeah, we added the primary, can't be a primary structure.
Right. Yep.
They could probably be removed at some point too also.
Okay.
Setbacks in C, ground mount SES shall meet the accessory structure setback for zoning districts with the unit is located, but in no event shall it be less than 5 feet.
I think you can ask them, but it was explained to me that it should only by all ones, and there is no access.
Not have that on this one.
It's through their own.
You're definitely working with the first
Yeah.
Rick, isn't it correct that there's no access to that
ones we were
property
just
other
talking
than
today.
where they want to put the solar panels other than through
I
their
think it
own?
might have been also
Yep.
when I had been emailed.
That's as far as I can tell,
Yeah.
and we can ask them, but that's as far as I can tell.
You want me to have, do we make copies of this?
Yes.
I think we probably need to. Because we can't talk about their project.
So while he makes copies of that, does anybody have any questions? So we have
Should we let them?
the all one guys here, right? And then do you have your solar experts here, right? We had a couple questions just in general about the solar piece as we look at this amendment for our code. How high are they mounted off the ground? Like those ground ones we're talking about? Are they always like a certain height, or are they sometimes lower?
8 foot typically at the top end. So the way we mount them up is they're all going to be flush to the 8 foot level at the top, going across. You're not going to have anything above that. For any of the ground mounts, obviously the roof mount is going to be different. But
And so do they turn also? Do they move?
this is not tracking it right now. This is going to be fixed mounted.
Fixed mounted 8 feet, and they won't turn.
They're stationary.
Okay.
How shiny are these things? Like how much light do they reflect?
So by their very nature, they're designed not to reflect light, they're designed to absorb light.
So I figured.
So, when you're working around airports and stuff like that, this tends to be a little more of a concern, but, they're around airports and high traffic areas like that. Joe had a glare analysis done, and Joe will tell you how many minutes out of the year there is an increased amount of glare, and I think it was less than 20 minutes.
It's 18 minutes of the year where there might be a substantial glare, but that's looking at maybe a fraction of a minute a day. If that, we were looking at a few seconds a day, maybe where it could possibly impede something. The other good location is based off of where the array is going to be located, the ground arrays. It's a great distance away from the road. You're probably not going to be able to see them or impede any of the traffic on One Memorial or anything that way either.
Okay.
So when I was thinking of this, so I have a solar panel in my boat. And it's movable, right? I can set it different places to make sure I get the optimal sun. But when that thing is set in the sun and the boat's rocking, I mean, it's like a watch on the cabins. It's just like constantly looks like a flashlight going through. So what we were talking about is that like the house directly to the south, right, of where you're going to put those ground mount ones. Would they get at some point like a glare that big onto the back of their house or into their windows? I don't know where their bedroom is, but their bedroom could look right at that, and then all of a sudden it's like
that shouldn't be a situation that you run into with the glare being reflected into the house like what you're talking about. That way, it shouldn't happen that way, and if it does, it should be very subdued in any kind of way, because it is going to be collecting those sunlight instead of refracting the full light into their house that way.
They're also going to be set at a 30-degree angle.
So that's the next question I was going to ask. Okay, 30 degrees?
Yep.
So they're at a 30-degree angle, but the very top of them is still 8 feet. So this edge is 8 feet. All right.
So if we have a requirement for there to be an 8-foot fence around them to screen them from neighbors, they shouldn't be visible above that fence.
No, they should not be.
Okay, perfect. Well, and that would end the glare too. So I think that answers all the kind of questions we had about that particular one.
Is there a noise? I mean, some people have talked about a humming with them or anything like that. Is there any noise associated?
There should be no more noise than is currently generated by transformers or other electrical equipment that's sitting out there.
Okay, thank you.
Directly to the grid, or you got storage?
It's directly to the grid. The way that we set it up is that it's basically designing the array that's custom to the Alwyn's usage, so that we're getting as close to a 0% offset. So it's not getting stored on location, it's going straight to Amron's grid and coming back on it that way.
So are there, just in general then, are there safety concerns if there was storage?
No, it's just an interesting thing.
Okay.
Sometimes you would want.
I just meant for the code. I didn't know if we needed anything in the code.
Just that, they can run the meter backwards on Ameren in my old company I worked for. So. Plus I work at the park.
Mounted as is this
Yep.
right here?
Yep.
Okay.
And again, we're not quite to their development.
Okay.
We got to first have an ordinance that allows that, so take it in that order.
But so as you look through this, if you have any just general questions about the SESs, that's what we were trying to get at, because we talked about a taller than 8-foot fence, but that would be really unsightly, right? And but we thought that they moved, so then we thought at some point during the year they might be 10 feet tall.
Okay.
And that doesn't sound like the case in this case anyhow. So, and you got to think through not only this, kind of installation, but if
Going forward.
if your neighbor puts one in on his roof, or if your neighbor wants to put one in his backyard or whatever, I mean. 8-foot fence isn't going to be ideal there either, but
If you're thinking along farther down the line, you have to address storage now too, because storage into batteries entails a whole different gamut of stuff.
well, that's what I was kind of thinking of. We don't have anything in here about whether they store it or they're just on the grid, right? Do we?
They're going to use storage.
We do not.
And I don't know, that's why I asked, is there a safety, because I wasn't sure why you were asking, but I don't know of any, I was trying to think through just quickly, any storage type, you get lots of batteries sitting there, and is it could be some sort of risk.
And any installation is going to have to comply with the electrical code.
Yeah, so, okay.
On the other hand, storage, if you had, you'd have to cross it. Depends what batteries are associated.
I guess just in general, a storage, I know this one isn't a storage thing, but more for your expertise in solar. Are there issues with storage? Large battery conglomerations like that? Are there things we should take into account?
I have not designed a system with the storage battery part on it yet, but Lewis will probably know more about that. Any potential hiccups with the storage for battery in the future?
I don't think so. A lot of the battery solutions today are going to be required to be indoors, up to code, very safe for the most part. So unless you're doing a large custom battery, which would be like an industrial purpose for like peak shaving or something, most of the like residential type stuff is pretty easy to have integrated.
So we shouldn't have to worry about it.
So now that we all are literally on the same page with the ordinance, Rick, you can take it away.
Yep. So as you go down through the amendment, we're talking through the purpose is basically covering all the solar energy SESs is what we're kind of calling them now, right? So there's a definition section that's pretty straightforward, but really when you get down to 10.12.4 is where we start talking about the ground height shall not exceed 10 feet. The residential SESs should not be allowed as primary use on any given lot, so you can't just have SESs as the principal structure on the lot.
Okay.
So somebody couldn't buy a lot next to them and just put solar panels on it. And then ground mount SESs will meet the setbacks for the zoning district in which they're in, but they'll be no less than 5 feet. 2 there talks about side yard, rear yard setbacks. Then the next one is keeping it 50 feet away from any principal structure that's used for residential purposes. So that's giving it some buffer in a residential zone. And
for most of it.
yeah, and if you look at when we get to their proposal, they stay from the principal structure. I mean, they're closer to garages and that sort of thing, but from the principal structure, they're 50 feet. So. And the fence.
I have issues with this screening.
Okay.
So we're telling them that they have to have 8 feet of screening around it, but before, we're allowing these to be 10 feet tall.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
We went round and round on this.
So I feel like if we're
Should
going
we
to
keep
keep
it?
they can't be over 8 feet tall.
Well, what we were talking about, we thought it was a tilting, and so like when it tilted, you might see like the tips of them, and then we went back and forth whether we should do a 10-foot tall fence or not, and then we decided that would look like a stockade, and maybe if only certain times, these are not tilting, so that's not an issue here, but maybe can we keep it at 8?
Well, so are there systems that tilt then and move?
Yeah, so there are tracking arrays. So typically you're going to see those, and the economics on those are going to be 250 kW bigger. Like you're going to need some space to put those in.
Okay.
And if you're talking about in the setting that we're in, the cost per acre is probably going to be too high. for those to make sense, just because of the installation costs.
So we probably should never see one in town that's taller than 8 feet in the first place then.
I can see someone who's really into it, and they have a manually adjusting one, and they're going to go out and do their own thing every day, but for the most part, probably not. You have to have somebody who's really into the finer details and is more of a pet project for them.
So we could keep it to 8 feet.
Yeah, so we're going to keep the section.
And if I can hop in on the 8-foot high fence, I just spoke with one of our engineers, it would cause us to change our plan kind of significantly in this case, because we're still going to catch some sun on the east and west side of this throughout the year, and so it is going to cut down on the production in the array.
But that's how close the fence is to the units, though, right? If you kept the fence further.
Yep, so it's going to condense and move where that array is, and we're trying to maintain the setbacks as they're currently outlined. And so if we're going X number of feet from, my understanding is the residential structures in the area, and we're trying to maintain with the property lines. And once we do all that moving, we start to get shading effect from the 8-foot fence on portions of the array. So like that southern portion or the very eastern portion of the ground mount, not what is currently allowed.
Okay, well, we'll get to that when we talk about that specific one. But so I think what we were talking about is A.
Yeah.
Yeah, A and 1012.
Should be 8 then?
That's fine.
So then 12.5 talks about just requirements and generals, visibility, safety, building codes, installations. The one thing we changed is down at the bottom, brand labels that are visible from boundary of subject shall be removed. I guess we should maybe, before we pass an ordinance that says an 8-foot fence, and then they have a problem with an 8-foot fence.
That's what I was thinking. It does matter in this one.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to get through everybody knowing and now we can look at that probably.
Well, at one time, there's a North building about 2 blocks in on 24 in Bartonville. They have large arrays. They're at least 8 feet tall. Apparently, they didn't discuss it with anybody as far as fence the nose in or anything like that. And they're right out 3 feet from the curb. There's like, I think about 12 of them sitting inside this building, just out in the open. At least we're discussing fences and a few other things. Apparently, they didn't do it there.
Other than aesthetics, I mean, are you worried about like kids, people, animals going up there and damaging them? I mean, if there wasn't a fence?
Yeah, so if there's not a fence, all of the wiring and all of the racking is secured on the back of the array.
Okay.
So someone would have to go up there with the intent of actively trying to destroy it. You'd have to take a bucket of tools with you, basically.
Okay.
No one passing by would accidentally get electrocuted, or nothing bad would happen. So,
or even damage the equipment. Even damage the equipment. Like kids horsing around thinking it looks cool, like climbing around on it, wouldn't damage it, or would?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, they're rated for hail, and they're meant to be outside for the next couple of decades. So if you walked up there with an aluminum baseball bat and started doing a tap on it, you're going to crack a couple of panels.
It needs to have some sort of fence around it.
I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I'm just asking the question because I wasn't in that meeting, and so I was curious as to.
Yeah, we have a lot of arrays that don't have fences around them. They're in outside banks and other things. For some people, to show peace, to show their commitment to the environment, as well as it's a substantial financial investment. So some people are very proud of it, and so we go to lengths to design it to look and flow with the rest of their property. So it's a matter of preference to some degree of why people are doing it.
Okay.
So this is still the proposed site, right? This is still what it looks like?
Yes.
So where were you saying if you had a 6 or an 8 foot fence, it would?
Yeah, so I think if there was a fence down here, that was an issue. And depending on where the property line is, if the fence is along this side, we've tried to maximize the production. Maximize the production for the site there, using basically every sprigs that we can to give them as much power coming from the array as possible.
So ideally, you want no fence.
Ideally, there would be no fence yet,
But like I said, it would just matter how close the fence was to the array, right?
Yeah.
And that being said, with the exception of only a chain link fence on the front panel, the eastern side, there's a chain link fence. The rest of them have dog-eared fence from the existing properties already, both going on the north side and the east side.
Yeah,
along the
I
back.
think I've got most of that. If you don't have enough, you can send down.
Completely enclosed fence from the neighbor's house. So it's basically, so there is a fence line already back through here and through here going to that new garage that was built. This has just a 4-foot chain link fence, which you're over 200 feet between here and the house the only house that would be there, which is the Willis home. So this is the biggest concern of having a closed fence on this, because she's already got tree lines
That's the
here.
property line right there, right?
Correct. And she's already got tree lines up in her yard, and it's another 200 plus feet to her front yard, so it's not really impeding per se, and the glare is definitely not an issue from there. It's just putting another fence on fences that are already existing on the south end and the east back here. There's already existing dog-eared fences in there, in that property.
What kind of fence?
Like a completely wooden fence.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go all the way across here, does it?
This garage runs this pretty much this length all the way to here, and there's nothing, empty lot here from here over. There's a chain link, but there's a complete closed-in fence 3/4 the way up already from that existing garage.
But there's not.
I thought it was just a section. I thought that garage had a closed-in fence that was about like that.
Right.
And then up here was not, and down here was not.
No, it jogs this way. This is open here, and there's a fence on this wall here that comes across this backyard here. There's a full fence.
But on the north, let me think, the north side, yeah, that doesn't have any, if it has anything, it's chain link. I'm looking at a picture I took today, right? There's not any solid fencing.
This is a chain. This is enclosed here. This is enclosed. This almost whole run is enclosed. It encloses to here, jogs here, and encloses here. This would be a chain link on Miss Wells' property, and then a chain link on the front here. So the south and the north, and I think I'm saying that right, would be shorter chain, and this would be enclosed already up there. I'm just confirming what's already existing.
So it seems like to the east, though, there is a substantial amount of space before the property line. Like how much, I guess to me it seems like there'd be enough space to put fence there. If it's 8 foot, so it's not going above the panels themselves. I'm trying to figure out how that would, if they could be 10 feet out or...
Yeah, so during different times of the year, the sun's going to change its position in the sky, and so depending on how high that fence is, you're going to get different...
So if the fence is 8 foot and the panel's 8 foot, I mean, it just, I don't know. I mean, I don't, obviously, you're the expert, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to cast that much of
mine is, I think there's enough.
Yeah, so it's like at noon, right, it's not going to have that big of a difference in production, but like 6, 7, 8, 9 in the morning, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, as the sun is setting, you're going to start losing this.
But I'm just saying, with the number of trees that are already in there on the east side, and if you put a fence over along the property line, I can't imagine that a 6 foot fence is going to cause any more shade than all the trees that are already there. I mean, you're 20 feet from the arrays, at least, on the east side, and then on the south side, you already have that tree that tree line and that chain link fence. So if you put a fence along the chain link fence, I just don't understand how it could cause.
How do the trees affect it?
How do the trees affect
Yeah, I mean, do they shade it as well?
Yeah, if the trees that are there, that would be an impeding to it. They would have, any kind of tree cover canopy is going to shade it off the roof, obviously, or off the ground mount, so it's not going to be producing as much power that way. Any kind of shading would come from that.
And to add on to that, what you see right here, a lot of these are overgrown weeds that have grown up. I mean, they're not real like trees. We've got walnuts trees in here that we're gonna
Take out.
sell off.
Oh, you sell off.
But if we can't, you know, due to if there's any nails or whatever, I don't know. We have to get that assessed.
Yeah.
But that south tree line are those trees on your, are those?
Maybe a couple, yeah, it's, a lot of them fall on our line.
Okay.
And if not, we are in good terms with Mr. Smith on the corner there. I'm sure he would work with us in terms of that.
I mean, I guess though, in terms of, I mean, originally when I would thought about the ground mounted systems kind of being in the heights, given that we're not, we're landlocked, we don't have a lot of space, I was concerned about how they would be. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're looking at solar, and I want us to be encouraging of that. But I also, like I said, because we are, urban, suburban, we do have to take into account, I mean, I do feel like a fence is a good idea, just because otherwise, visually, these could, because we're not just looking when we're passing the ordinance at your property, we're also looking at, we've got to pass an ordinance that is going to, affect everybody, and it might be appropriate. I mean, this is a very unique situation. I've never seen lots like this that aren't fronting a street, so it is a unique situation, but ordinance-wise, we have to pass something that we're comfortable that any other commercial property says they want to put ground mount systems in, that we're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
What about passing,
Theoretically, up there.
just for a suggestion, within so many feet of a street or of a street, since this is so set back, these are never going to be seen from either Boulevard or War Memorial Drive the way they're tucked. Like you said, it is a unique piece there, being back there.
Well, what we can do is, there's a couple things. We're looking at an ordinance for the whole village, so we can pass that. There are also variances that can be had, or that we could give a particular situation, so those are.
That was going to be my question. So we could pass an ordinance with an 8-foot fence, and then they could come back and ask for a variance, or anyone could.
Right, yeah. Well, that just gives us more control.
Well,
exactly.
They're gonna come and ask for one.
Right now.
Yeah, I know.
2 minutes.
Well, because I'm even looking at this particular situation, I'd be, if there was, a fence to this surround, like this set of, wouldn't need their own fence, if it encased it into their property.
Right.
So fence here, fence here, fence here, but not necessarily needs to be one here.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I would be okay with that.
But again, any commercial is generally roof mounted, like on a flat roof, just like that. You'll never see it, ever. It'd be like a green roof. You never see them until you're on top of them. I mean, I understand that we can go back on that. I mean, I got a whole back half of my house faces south, and again, all I got to do is eliminate 2 trees on my own property, and it would get all the sun in the world.
Okay.
But again, I mean, commercial ones, they're always on top of roofs. I mean, it's kind of unique, especially that one to the north, across the park there. But he's got a substantial piece of ground going for him too.
Well, and the reason being for that is because we are running a substantial amount of refrigeration, which is in the thousands of dollars every month. And for us just to cover our roofs without being able to utilize the ground eliminates it doesn't make it economical for us to spend over $1 million on the property if we can't get enough solar to generate the power to run our whole plant. This, as it lays, will generate enough power to where we're going to pay a meter of $15, $16 a month, and that's it. We are going to be able to 100% be green and generate enough power and bank it through Ameren to run our whole facility year-round with no utility bill, basically, other than a meter charge.
I mean, it's an aggressive amount of generation.
Well, and that's why we ended up choosing folks we did. It was about, well, with the state of Illinois generating all the money that came in, of the $200 million that's going into this lottery for solar energy, clean energy. 2 out of about 8 that came into the state of Illinois, Simple ran another firm out of Minnesota we looked at because they were the only ones that were creative enough to understand we had some property to generate enough power here to run our whole facility. And they did their due diligence. They've gone through this with their engineers thoroughly to make sure we had enough space in between on our roof and on the ground to get enough panels in there to get what we needed.
Okay, so before we get to their, we're back to the agenda, to the actual ordinance change. Are we good with the ordinance change? Does anybody have any?
How did you come up with 8-foot fence? Who decided it was going to be an 8-foot fence?
Well, we picked 8 feet because the top of the arrays are going to be 8 feet.
But if it's a chain link fence, what does that matter?
No, it's solid.
Solid. It's a dog.
Then it ought to be chain link fence, 6 foot tall. We make a better choice as far as I'm concerned.
I think they don't want it to, I mean, us, they were thinking of an aesthetic position. We weren't at that meeting.
Yeah, why weren't we?
I wasn't there because I was out of town.
We were trying to get the wording on the amendment to bring it to the board tonight to talk.
Like a working draft.
So this is a working draft. We can change it to chain link. We can change it to no fence at all.
But a chain link fence would negate what you're trying to do. What's the point?
Right.
That's why I asked the question about safety and that sort of thing.
So we said, hey, if most of these things are about 8 feet, if you had an 8-foot barrier fence around one to kind of shield it from everything else, you'd need it to be a solid fence, and it would need to be 8 feet tall. We can say 6 feet. We can say, not solid. We can say whatever we want to say. That's the point of this part of the meeting is here's a working draft. Where do you want to change it?
Okay, let me tell you my aspect.
Okay.
You're putting a prison wall around something that nobody can see that you ought to be promoting as in the heights that we're far-sighted enough to enable solar energy to be used easily. So to me, a 6-foot chain link fence where somewhere down Warmore Drive, you look and see that array through the house and trees and stuff and say, wow, these people got a lot of insight. We ought to move our company here. Okay? You block it in and we're going to see it.
Perhaps something to think about would be that because you need a special use for the ground, screening is just one of the conditions that's considered based on the actual site plan, adjacent properties.
Could be, because I'd rather have no fence than a 6-foot chain link fence.
I agree. Like I was thinking about the chain link.
I agree with that.
It doesn't seem like we
I
need
just
for
don't like chain
safety.
link fences.
So what we were thinking of is,
Put around school granite.
well, we were just thinking if you're the property next door, you may not want to look at a field of solar panels. Or any other business could just put them anywhere on a commercial property. I don't think we really limit much other than it being requiring to meet setback. So
Anybody that puts one of these in has to have a site plan.
Yep.
true.
Right.
Yes.
And so what
Not
you're
the
saying-
roof mount, not the roof mount, on the
On the ground, that's what I
ground.
mean, on the ground.
That requires a special use.
So we would have to do the special use, so in that we could have something stating that they would have to have a fence or not have a fence.
Correct.
Or the barrier would be a condition.
When they come to us.
I mean, I'm on board with the idea of the barrier being a condition when they come to us.
So we can change that wording then to say,
I don't really think they would.
This is a very unique situation.
It is a very unique situation. And Craig, I agree with you that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I agree with you that I would like us to be very pro-solar. I mean, I think that is something important for us to do. So I think that is a valid point. I'm just trying to think of all, you know what I mean? When we make the ordinance, we have to kind of think about all the different things, but
Well, you mentioned the thing about being landlocked, you can't do stuff. So if you can't be landlocked, you gotta be better than what's surrounding you. And this is the show place.
Yep.
This is what you want to see. I want somebody coming down Walmart Drive and say, hey, that old Dave over there, he's got more hair on his head than all of us because he's snaking. Okay?
I guess we're a couple dummies.
So,
So they want to move here. I mean, that's,
so I guess in one, under screening, we could change that to say something to the effect that the screening would be part of the considerations.
For the site plan or special use, actually, under the special use, because
Yep.
you're really, that's where this board and the village board get to tailor the requirements for a particular installation to the surroundings.
Okay.
You know?
I'm fine with
So
that.
I would be in favor of that.
You good with that?
I mean, from a legal perspective.
You guys good with that?
Say that one more time.
Yes. We just said we were going to change this section 1 under screening, that
Maybe it would just read that, you know, as part of the special use application for any ground mount system, the board will consider appropriate screening based on surrounding. I can come up with language to that.
Yep. Which may require solid fencing or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So people know that there could be a fence.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any other changes to the actual ordinance before we take a vote?
I guess, what do you have as far as the maintenance inside of the grass, I'm not, maybe I'm overlooking it, okay?
No.
What's in there? Is it all, I mean, what if somebody wanted to do all blacktop? I mean, that would be the worst of the evils, I would think, but okay, otherwise, you want it to look like a park, you know, with
I guess what do you usually put under these? Is there
Blacktop would absorb
It's just going to depend on the location, what you're up to. So like a big solar farm, maybe you don't put anything, or you put down some crushed gravel, or you let the grass grow and throw in a goat in the fenced area. If you're in town, maybe you put some mulch down, or there's pollinator-friendly options. So there's like a mixture of flowers and shrubbery that will never grow to be taller than what the array is, and doesn't require a lot of maintenance, but it still looks nice, and there's other environmental benefits to it. So it's really at the discretion of the owner. It's just a cost adder of what we end up doing at the end of the day.
Is there any other ordinance stating what?
No. So we probably ought to put something.
So in terms of maintenance and all the other aspects of the property, we already have plenty of ordinances on property maintenance, weeds, all of that. None of that changes. This is just a particular use, like any other, like any accessory building. And, you know, so I don't know that, I mean, there's an electrical code that applies. That's going to have maintenance provisions from an electrical perspective. If the weeds grow tall, we do what we do with any house that has tall weeds. So I'm not sure the solar use mandates any special, you know, provisions in terms of.
I guess I would add it to like we just did to the screening and make it part of
Site plan review, right?
the site plan review. Will take into consideration the surface area also.
Sure.
At least then they have to tell us what they're doing, and if they said blacktop, we would say no.
We'd be like, That would be bad for runoff, all kinds of reasons.
We also never do that. It's incredibly expensive.
Well, you never know. There's crazy people all over the place.
This thing's already
I feel like if it's going to solar panels, it would be absorbed.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
Any
Other
others?
than that?
Nope.
Good, Craig?
I'm good.
Okay. So, I need a motion to pass the ordinance as amended.
You have a motion.
Mike makes motion, second by Craig. Call the roll.
Rick Pitzel.
Aye.
Much time tonight. Beth Kazam. Aye. Tessie Buckler.
Aye.
Sarah DeVore. Aye. Steve Katie.
Aye.
Mike Wu.
Aye.
Craig Masters.
Aye.
All ayes.
Okay, so we've already spent a large amount of time talking kind of about your site plan anyhow, and there it is. So any other questions? What are you going to put underneath this array?
Sort of grass-fed pigs.
So you're going to have a cow roaming around out there, and then you'll butcher it once a year, right?
The only way to access this is through your parking lot right
That's
now,
correct. That's 100% correct, yes.
And it sounds like you have good relationships with all these neighbors already. You've communicated with them about this project?
Not necessarily.
I know they were all mailed because we paid for the postage.
Okay.
I know they were reached out to.
Well, I was going to say, we would have had to have given,
90% of that is
Okay.
rentals. There's a couple homeowners, I think, in that whole little thing.
but they were all notified of the
Yeah,
meeting.
they're all
Yeah,
notified.
okay.
They all
We
received
even had
it.
anyone come and yell at us about it.
So no, seriously, so what are you gonna put on it? You gonna have grass under?
There's grass, we're gonna leave the grass existing where it's at. and we're
Okay.
Maintaining that. There will be on our south side of the lot, it's just gonna go right out in the lot itself, inside our fence area, but it's gonna be grass on the backfield. And then, of course, the roof is the roof.
Yeah, so that the north long one up there, that's gonna be right on the parking lot then?
Yes.
Okay.
So actually, technically, yes, it is extensive to have that.
Ah,
It's
see?
already existing there.
You already put one on blacktop.
It's a pre-existing.
And so, I know we talked a little bit about fencing, but so are we asking them to do anything else with fencing?
Everything is covered by fence or tree line as it sits right now.
Correct. This whole compound of the campus is all fenced.
That's all
There's,
6 foot.
I think, 2 or 3 foot curb, poured concrete with fencing,
Okay.
chain link fencing all the way around the property. This opens to get to our field, as well as fencing on chain link here, solid here, and chain link here.
And right now, it's up the other way too, your parking lot.
Yep.
There's plenty.
On that west side, it goes all the way up the back side of that parking lot.
Sounds like all you really need is for them to maintain the current fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there public, there's somebody, I don't know if there's public comment.
And some iffy trees on maybe on our neighbors' spots where we think that could be disastrous or old or whatever.
Only dead trees. If there's
Yeah.
dead overlying, that's what we're taking off of the side that's coming onto our property.
Like these here, some of them are in their yard of these people right over here. Some
Just
are a
trim
little
back, not
some are a little shifty. So
yeah.
I think that's, we're gonna have to make a discretion.
So how many mature trees are coming down?
Right.
No, she said
How many?
Oh, how many? I'm not sure. I didn't really.
Against the back fence line, there should be no.
Not sure. There isn't any.
But like right here in the center, it looks like you have mature
Decent
trees,
amount.
like right here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, right in the lot.
Like
Right in the
right in the center, so 1, 2, you're putting all those in. Like 5, 6, no, array, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. So over this part right here?
Yeah.
There's probably, what do you think, half dozen trees there?
Yeah.
6
that's
to 8
what 5
of the walnut.
Walnuts.
We know what you can do.
You want to buy?
You could spade them and put them on sidewalks.
Not a big mom.
And there's one,
We're gonna actually move those to.
there's one
Katie's
large
property.
Yeah, because what she just did.
And sell them to her at a.
there's one large evergreen too, right?
You guys are saying mixed signals,
Yeah.
you're getting energy from the sun, but you're taking
There's a large
something that
evergreen
sucks
right
up
in
the
the middle. There it is.
CO.
Well,
I can plant some more trees there.
Well, actually, I was actually thinking about asking that question. I know, obviously, with a bunch of solar, we're limited, but I mean, even on the corner of Warren Boulevard there, where your parking lot is your current building to the west, you could add some trees there. I don't know if that would interfere. I mean, I am concerned about the amount of trees that are coming
They
down.
could move them, just transplant them.
Well, I don't think those mature ones they can. They're too
No,
big.
you can't move
Yeah.
those.
Well, it's doable. But you need one of those.
No, not.
This is like,
These are huge. Yeah, no.
the evergreen that's there is like from here to that wall, so it's big.
No, you
It's not
can't.
like, unless they have like,
that tree in the front of Bill Boy's taking over the building.
Yeah, it's a pushing against everything on that building. It's gonna have to.
Not that, but the parking lot like here, like this green space here. You can't see it on there really, like right here. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be good if there were some replacement of some of those trees that we're losing.
so any other plan revisions or requests?
Just do it.
I'm torn on this situation because I feel like that could be developable land for your facility, but I see the positive benefit in doing this. So before you chose to have solar panels, did you have ideas for what you would do with that property?
You're 100% right about that, and it could be developable land, and that's why we had this conversation with the gentleman from Solar, because there has been talk of possibly a future expansion. If that does happen, the beautiful thing about these, you pick them up and put them on the roof of the new existing, if we build onto that property, it goes right up on the roof, then we're not even talking about a ground limits anymore. That was a big concern of ours, because that Gordon building would come down if there is a future expansion, and our concern was we're going to spend all this money. They said, no, we just disconnect them, you put your new roof on, boop, and slam it back.
Because that is a
So then
concern.
you wouldn't be out of money. You wouldn't be out of money that way.
But it's a concern for the Heights too, because we don't want lots that are just having solar panels on without getting, we would rather have higher value properties to bring in the tax income. So as much as we want to, we want solar, but I'd rather have them on top of buildings.
And we get that, but at the same point, this particular one, like I said, it's unique. It's landlocked.
It is. It's a weird lot.
Building on it, no one could come from the back as the gentleman put that garage. They wanted to put apartments back there years ago, and they wouldn't give them a cut through from Illinois Street back there years and years ago.
Is that why that giant garage is back there?
Giant garage is there. He bought that property because they were never going to get permission to put like apartments with a drive-through on that.
I was wondering about that.
That was back during Mayor Carter's days even, so.
That's it.
Okay.
When you're ready, you can go through and combine the site plan and special use, because it's really part and parcel of the same thing. So even though this is a site plan approval application and a special use application, all the criteria are the same. And I'm sure in your mind, you're considering the overall, so I would say just instead of doing it twice, it's far less confusing than those two options on the PH Samuel.
Before we get there, so is there anybody in the audience that has comments on this one? Didn't think so, but.
I do.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm one of the village trustees. I'm just curious, what are you gonna put in that Peoria building? I missed that. You're just gonna put this.
That's our warehouse. Right now, we're warehousing in there.
Oh, okay.
We have a 3,000 square foot cooler in there that we use for especially holidays when we have heavy beef that we can store in there. We have some of our trucks that got out of the winters that we can store in there. Maintenance, stuff, tools, we keep in there as of right now.
So the solar that you're wanting to put up, what is it just gonna maintain more?
It will just maintain the Allwins facility itself.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's okay.
That's all I have.
That's all this is.
It's our expensive garage nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go down through the findings for special use site plan combined. The established maintenance or operation of the special use or site plan will not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comforts of general welfare. We all agree on that?
Yes.
Special use or site plan will not be injurious to the uses and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair the property values of the neighborhood which is to be located. Yes?
Yes.
The establishment of a special use or site plan will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Yes?
Yes.
Adequate facilities, access roads, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or will be provided. Yes?
Yes.
Adequate measures have been taken to provide ingress and egress designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. NA. Public use or providing public utility service, NA. Because they're not a public utility service. And then the special use or site plan shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except for such regulations in each instance modified pursuant to the recommendations of the zoning board of appeals. Yes? Yes. Okay, need a motion? Motion. By Sarah. seconded by
Voted.
Mike.
Mike.
Any special conditions? Other than maintaining the fencing that's currently there, correct? Okay, call the roll.
Rick Pitzel.
Aye.
Elizabeth Kazam. Aye. Tessie Buckler.
Aye.
Sarah DeVore. Aye. Steve Katie.
Aye.
Mike Wu.
Aye.
Craig Masters.
Okay, all ayes, no nays. So this will be a recommendation, goes on to the village board. I just heard that they can't vote on it tomorrow night, so
Yeah,
we'll be
as much
voting
as
on it tomorrow night.
Wanted to, we can't.
But,
A 10-day waiting period. The public has 10 days to challenge these, so April 2 is what we're planning right now. We'll confirm that with you. Somebody should plan to be at that. Okay. Village board.
What's the date?
I just have a question. How does the public challenge that? I don't know.
All you do is you come into Village Hall and file a, you can send a letter.
Oh, okay.
So I hereby object
I just was curious.
to the recommendation, and then what makes the village board do is have a hearing
Okay.
before they actually entertain it.
So like a public, well, I guess the meeting's public already, but
Yeah,
kind of.
we had that on special, on the Vincent special use for used car lot,
Oh, right, okay.
because you recommended against it. That was the applicant objecting to your recommendation. So we had a 30-minute hearing before, it only lasted 5 minutes, but before the board meeting.
Okay. I was just curious.
Okay, we have one more thing to talk about. We have the ordinance number 2019-1586, ordinance amending Title 10, Chapter 7B and 7C of the Village Code for the purpose of modifying certain requirements for residential uses. So we have, so we were
This is
talking,
kind of spawned by our discussion.
so we talked about building height and on these previous things, right? And so
Are you
We-
speaking specifically about the Samuel project in that tip or in general?
well, that's what spurned
That's what spawned it,
this
but-
discussion. But as we start talking about it, we really, some of the other things going on may fall
encounter
into
this
categories.
again.
Well,
This again.
a lot of us have problems with the height of that building, but
Yeah.
since it's falling under code,
Yeah, it was
So we're trying to say if this keeps coming up,
Yeah.
maybe we should address it
Yeah.
so we have ability to control it.
Okay.
We talk about out of character with the surroundings, and this is an effort to put that in concrete terms, just with respect to building height. You can do it with respect to, the setbacks and the mass, the scale, there's other those are more nebulous, but this is pretty concrete, and it's one of the primary concerns is those height differentials, so.
So 7,
This is only the
B3 is building height for R2,
Yep,
and it's currently 35 feet. And what this says now is that section there that says, no building shall hereafter be erected or be the lesser of 35 feet or 12 feet greater in height than the principal structures on either immediate adjacent lot. So basically, we're trying to get this stair-step thing, right?
Right.
So if the houses on both sides of it are one-story houses, you can't go to put a 3-story building
You
next to
can't
it.
see what's happening right now, basically.
What happens if is it principal story? So what if there's nothing on the lot on one side and then someone wants to put a 3-story building in, there's a 2-story on this side and there's a vacant lot over there? Does that address this or no? Go ahead, didn't
it doesn't, but if the lot isn't developed, then you're not going to have the issue like you have
Right.
that we confronted tonight, where you've got a ranch house next to a 4-story.
Oh, that's true, because it would be, never mind.
It hasn't been developed yet.
Yeah,
I
so
think
it doesn't
it's fine.
matter. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm thinking about it
Good question.
in a way that did not actually make sense.
But even if technically you'd have to give it a variance, even if you did, you would probably be more likely to give it a variance.
Right, but, okay.
If if there's an undeveloped lot there.
Yeah, and especially because R3 goes up to 54 feet in height, and that seems.
So B1
So then-
and R3 are the same height?
Nope, no, so this is B2, we're talking about B2 right now. It's 35 feet.
R2.
R2, I mean, sorry.
We just did R2 and R3.
And then you go to the next one down is R3, and that's 54, and it's the same, I mean, it's the same basic language.
But what Beth's saying is R3 is the same height as B2.
B1 currently.
Or B1.
Currently.
Oh, yeah,
Because Katie's B1, right?
Right, but what B1 says is it reverts back to R3. So that's why R3 and B1 are the same.
Okay. But the setbacks are probably different.
So all the Bs, if you're using it for residential, refer back to R3.
Okay.
So as you look through the code, every B, when it starts talking about setbacks and yards and heights and all that stuff, it reverts
it's
back to R3.
being used
If it's being used for,
But if that building got torn down and commercial is built, then it reverts back, like Katie's doing. Because 54 is high for a residential.
It's really essentially a 5-story building. I mean, like, it could...
Depending, yeah.
Depending on how high your ceilings are. I mean, that's a tall building.
Hers is 51.
51.
So that's why we were thinking that this might be, but this is, okay, so it's the lesser of 54 feet or 12 feet greater in height than the principal structure.
Whichever's lesser. In other words, you can never go past the height
you
limit.
could go a 2-story next to it, but you couldn't do a 3-story.
Right.
Can we diminish the 54 feet?
I'm trying to think of why would we want, really,
Do we ever want that? Like, what is the Pabst is that high? This new building is that high?
4 stories. Perhaps it's 4 stories, something under that.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's close.
I'm just trying to think of the different properties and what we're going to be,
So if we were saying we generally would want nothing greater than a 3-story building in an R3, we could bring it down to,
That's
let's
what
say
I'm
if you had 36 feet, that's giving you 12 feet of floor. I don't know, obviously the heights vary, so you have to, I don't know what the standard is, like measurement that you would give. Just to count as a story. I do feel like 54 is, I don't know why we would want anything that high.
With the peak though, do we need to grow up a little bit more than like 36? Like
with an attic?
Yeah. So then maybe you'd be looking at like, we could do something like 45 feet or something.
I think anything lower would be an improvement, so. I mean,
A 45-foot house is tall.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even a 3 floors at 12, that's 12 feet of floor. That's a pretty generous.
Yeah.
But you're right, you would have to roof, so I mean, it could be 40.
44 would.
44.
You would probably have a max of a 4-story building. Any more it's going to be 10 feet, right?
Yeah.
So
9 or 10 feet.
40 is going to be pretty much a 4-story building. So there can't get a 5-story in there.
Right.
Okay, I'd like 40.
I do too.
44.
Because they can always
44.
come back to us and ask for
We can
a
ask for
variance and have the building can be taller.
But then they're not coming to us with a 54-foot building and be like, well, we're in code.
So in section D
I just need
here,
a number, 40, 44.
No, I don't.
44,
I didn't mean that.
44.
You don't want to go home, do you?
It's been a long night.
44,
And what set number is that?
D.
Why, is there a reason why we don't want to do 40 or just 40?
Well, like they said, if
Think
you
of the
wanted to
joist.
have something with a peak on it or something like that, to have something other than,
I've got a 2-story house and the peak of my roof is 36 feet off the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I feel
good.
better about that because
It's got a steep pitch to it. and
eliminates the
It's basically attic space.
what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
So,
Right, which would be,
it's
Exactly.
bless you. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, 44 and the rest of it, everybody good with? Right, the stair step?
Yeah. I think
Is
that's,
depending on the type of roof. I mean, if you put all nothing but flat roofs, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. You might say, okay, then it's 44 foot plus my pitch of my roof is similar.
Well, but we're thinking a 4-story building would be 40,
Correct.
and that would give them another 4 feet to put something up. Now, 4 feet's not very much, but then they'd have to come for a variance to make it 12. Yeah. Okay. Call the roll.
Rick Pitzel.
Aye.
Beth Kazan. Aye. Betsy Butler.
Aye.
Sarah DeVore. Aye. Steve Katie. Mike Wu.
Aye.
Craig Masters. All ayes. Do we need to take a motion?
To approve what? Were they making a motion to approve?
I didn't know if we had to. I guess we're, yeah.
Oh, new business? Oh, did we make a motion? Did we make a motion?
Don't know. I can't.
Wait, you're right.
We did not make a motion.
We did not make a motion for that.
Back up and do it again.
Let's back up to it.
Yeah, we need to make a motion.
I thought we did.
I'll make a motion to approve.
No, we
Sarah
just,
made a motion and Tessie.
Oh, you
I'll
approved the
second.
other one. I'm sorry. Tessie second.
Do we have to re-vote or can we just
Yes.
count that one?
We'll revote.
I'm going to take that
Might as
one.
well.
Just real fast. Okay, Rick Pitzel.
Aye.
Elizabeth Kazan. Tessie Butler.
Aye.
Sarah DeVore. Aye. Steve Katie. Mike Wu. Craig Masters.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.